What's going on? Ludmilla elbowed Elishnish in the ribs. The frost dragon turned Snow Elf fell silent and turned a tearful look at her, but Ludmilla only silently willed her to be quiet. She didn't elbow her that hard. Dragons were extraordinarily resilient, besides. Before them, Lady Shiltir stood before Gudrun. From behind, they could not see her expression. Her posture and tone of voice, however, indicated that something of great importance had occurred. The fact that Lady Shiltir had used a charm spell, which was considered a hostile action not just by humans, but every race that she knew of, turned the situation even more weighty. Ludmilla did not know what imagery the frost giants associated with their lore. From the words of the recited segment alone, however, it did at least feel like a loose match. Lady Shiltir appeared before Gudrun as a figure helmed and armored in blood red, and her spear gleamed with power. On Heaven's Field, which could describe one flying through the sky, was accurate to Lady Shiltir's capability, and the white wings of her armor lent that impression as well. This lore has been kept by our people for centuries, Gudrun said. Passed down by bards and mystics through verbal tradition. How many actually? Sit down, Lady Shiltir told her. Looking up at you like this is annoying. Gudrun did as Lady Shiltir bid, returning to the makeshift seat of furs from where she had discussed many matters with Ludmilla. Lady Shiltir returned to stand between Ludmilla and Elishnish. Exactly how long have your people held this law for? She asked. I don't know, Gudrun answered. It is beyond living memory, perhaps right after our people's arrival on the northern shores of the Azalizia Mountains. There is nothing to mark the passing of time, only events and the fates of mortals, monsters and the gods. As a seer, I am responsible for keeping the prophecies handed down to us. Do you at least know who left you with these prophecies? I do, Gudrun nodded. In times past, a Valkyrie came to our people. She named herself Skuld, one of the three spinners of fate. During her visit, she not only offered us the future, the prophecies that the seers keep, but the stories that make up a significant portion of our lore. Lady Shiltir's eyes narrowed at the mention of another Valkyrie. Gudrun faltered, and worry creased her brow. Where did this Valkyrie come from? From another place, Gudrun replied. Another world. Near the beginning of one of the prophecies, I believe Skuld speaks of herself and her travels. Let's hear it. Gudrun nodded and cleared her throat. Remember yet, the Jotuns of yore, who gave me bread, in days gone by. 9 worlds I knew, 9 in the tree, with mighty roots, beneath the mold. Ridiculous, Lady Shiltir muttered. The look on Lady Shiltir's face matched her incredulous tone. Even her true appearance had an expression of bewildered shock. Gudrun shifted uncomfortably at her reaction. Have I displeased you, Valkyrie? I haven't figured that out yet. Where did this school go? This is unknown, Gudrun replied. She stayed with us for a time, until this lore was instilled into our people. When she departed, she left each of the 9 tribes with a powerful heirloom to serve as a memento of her visit. So in all this time, Lady Shiltir said, you have preserved the lore that this Valkyrie left you with. Did she influence your ways, as well? Regarding that, my lady, Ludmilla dared to speak. I've been recording information on their customs and practices for the last few days. Lady Shiltir held her hand out to the side. Reaching into her infinite haversack, Ludmilla produced a stack of notes. After placing it into Lady Shiltir's hand, she produced another. Her liege frowned. This isn't going to be another monstrous tome like the one from Facet County, is it? No, my lady, Ludmilla replied. It's just these 2. With a suspicious look after receiving the 2 stacks of notes, Lady Shiltir started flipping through the pages. After several minutes, she stopped. Hanzos. At her word, 5 Hanzos stepped out of Lady Shiltir's shadow. They lined themselves up neatly before her. Secure the building, she told them. You are to heed Lady Zaradnik's instructions if she issues any to you. Ludmilla, keep Gudrun here and ensure that no harm befalls her. Yes, my lady. Might I know where you're going? Back, Lady Shiltir replied. This requires further investigation. With that, Lady Shiltir teleported away. Ludmilla directed 4 of the Hanzos to keep watch outdoors. The 5th remained in the building with them. Elishnish plopped herself on the ground. What was that all about? She moaned. I have no idea what's going on. Something important, Ludmilla told her. a matter beyond our authority or understanding. You mean you don't know? Elishnish frowned. Then how can you act like that? Because Lady Shiltir has been entrusted with certain duties by His Majesty, and I have vowed to assist her in those duties. Beyond that, she has my complete trust. Elishnish blinked at her blankly. Now that she understood how frost dragons develop trust, Ludmilla refrained from attempting to explain further. Instead, she looked across from them to examine Gudrun. Are you still charmed? No. I see. I hope you won't harbor any ill will towards Lady Shiltir. The appearance of another Valkyrie here is a matter of utmost importance. Ill will? Gudrun swallowed. A Valkyrie is a servant of the gods. How can a lowly seer like myself even consider such a thing? Ludmilla felt Elishnish hiding behind her shoulder again. Gudrun's heated response gave her pause. I'm curious, Ludmilla said. What does a Valkyrie mean to your people? They are the choosers of the slain. The choosers of the slain? Frowning at the strange description, Ludmilla wondered if there was some problem with the translation. When worthy souls fall in battle, Gudrun explained, the Valkyries come to take them up to join our honored ancestors in the afterlife. Your people place great emphasis on warfare and honorable conduct, Ludmilla noted. But not all of your people are warriors. What happens to everyone else? There are places for each sort, Gudrun replied. Women who lived and died nobly go to the fair fields near to the halls of our honored ancestors. Those who toil go to halls of their own. Tarnished, unworthy souls, as well as those who have succumbed to infirmity and age with nothing to their name, fall to Niflheim, the realm of the dead. There, they will languish in the dark and misty valleys, partaking in sickness, hunger, and decrepit suffering for all eternity. The frost giant's beliefs weren't anywhere near the same as her own, but it still had a handful of similarities to her faith. Sursana judged the souls of the dead and granted the faithful eternal peace in his realm. The unworthy were granted eternal despair. She supposed that demi-humans would have even less patience for those who squandered their time and talents. When the Valkyrie just now appeared, Gudrun said, I was filled with sorrow and joy at the same time. I knew that Sigurd and Brunhild were dead, but they were also chosen, but then the Valkyrie left. Did I do something wrong? You are her servant, is there something you can tell me, Baroness? Baroness, Elishnish piped up from the side. The both of them looked at her. Baroness, Elishnish told Gudrun, not Baroness. Ludmilla furrowed her brow at Elishnish's words. I see, Gudrun said. I wasn't aware they were different. What are you talking about? Elishnish started when Ludmilla cast her voice at her. How? Forget that for now, what do you mean by Baroness, not Baroness? The corner of Elishnish's mouth twitched. Ah, that's quite funny. Elishnish knelt and started scratching out letters on the ice with a finger. You're both using titles that are being translated into roughly equivalent titles that the other party understands. The frost giants do not have barons, they have thans. They do not have earls, they have jarls. So I'm a thane? No, you're a baroness. Elishnish tilted her head. It's your human title, yes? You're not a frost giant. There are no female thans, anyway. Now I wonder what else I've been hearing wrong. Elishnish's gaze drifted to Gudrun. A few things, probably. Volkv is probably coming out as seer or shaman for you. Volkv, I know what that is, though. What? In response to Elishnish's confused reply, Ludmilla knelt down beside her and lightly traced out the word. No, Elishnish shook her head and wrote out a word beside it. Vulva is what frost giants call their seers. I have no idea what it is that you just wrote. I see. You hear, you mean? Ludmilla raised her hand. Wah. Elishnish flinched away. Don't hit me. It actually hurts when you hit me. How could that be? Ludmilla scoffed. You're blowing things out of proportion. I'm not. Even an adventurer hitting me on the nose with a sword didn't do anything, but it hurt when you elbowed me just now. Ludmilla poked her elbow out, and Elishnish reflexively jumped away. Maybe she was telling the truth. Well, I'm sorry if I hurt you, Ludmilla said. Are you all right? Of course I'm all right, Elishnish replied. I regenerate, after all. Ludmilla itched to hit her. She resettled herself, then turned to Gudrun with an apologetic smile. Please forgive the interruption, Ludmilla said. I don't believe you've done anything wrong. It should be as Lady Shiltir mentioned, She went to investigate the appearance of this other Valkyrie. She left the Hanzos to guard this place, and she will return when she has completed her task. Is that so? Relief flooded Gudrun's face. I was truly worried. I thought perhaps they had been judged unworthy. Could Valkyries really do as Gudrun said? Ludmilla believed herself close to Lady Shiltir when it came to their relationship as vassal and liege, but she knew very little about her when it came to her true powers or her origin. Many beings appeared as gods to the peoples of the world. The 6 great gods were counted among these beings, and existed alongside mortals for a time. It was not something that could be disputed. Evidence of their existence abounded and divine magic was granted through their worship. Though they were not Ludmilla's gods, the Sorcerer King and his most powerful servants may very well be gods. A few of the demi-human tribes already worship the Sorcerer King as one. How are worthy deaths counted in your traditions? Ludmilla asked. For instance, my family, including all of my ancestors, died fulfilling their duties either in war or defense of the border. Border lords do not live to see old age, but we hold great pride in the legacy of our houses. Their example is a beacon for me to follow, and I strive to do honor to their memory. Sursana, our god of death, welcomes worthy souls such as theirs to dwell peacefully in his blessed realm. Our ways are similar. Gudrun pondered her words, yet different at the same time. You should regale us with the tale of your battle against Sigurd and his warband, and I will tell you which deaths were worthy. Could she do that? Ludmilla couldn't remember anything that happened after the avalanche had overwhelmed them, and she wasn't sure if anything was missing before that. Then there was Ishpan's criticism about her being absolutely terrible at spinning exciting tales. I am unaccustomed to doing so, Ludmilla said carefully, but believe that I can at least relate what happened. Excellent. Gudrun's pale blue eyes gleamed and she rubbed her hands together with a relish. Usually, our warriors cannot wait to boast of their exploits, but you are the exact opposite of this. The giant leaned over to fish out a whole nook carcass out of a nearby satchel. She broke off a meter-long chunk and tossed it over to Elishnish. It must have been twice her weight, but she lightly caught it with sparkling eyes. Gudrun looked at Ludmilla with a question on her face, but Ludmilla held out a hand in polite refusal. Crunching sounds filled the air as the two munched on the frozen solid meat. How did their teeth not break? Ludmilla stepped out to the side between them, trying to piece together her memories of the battle into a coherent tale. She started from the beginning of that day, with the expedition's rangers being dispatched as sentries for the survey. When she reached the part where Sigurd's warband appeared with the storm at their backs, Gudrun leaned forward. Humans cannot see through violent storms like frost giants appear to be able to, Ludmilla said, so I waited out of sight behind a large boulder to avoid being struck down at range from an unseen opponent. That was where I encountered the first of Sigurd's band. What was their name? Gudrun asked. He appeared suddenly, Ludmilla answered. His boot came down right beside me with no warning, so I believe he was a hunter. I thought he might reach down and swat me like so many of the undead across the ice, so I drew my weapon and sheared his leg off at the ankle. He roared as he fell forward, and I finished him off before he could alert anyone else to my presence. A fight between hunters, Gudrun mused. They are usually decided at range, but it is not unheard of to end this way. An acceptable death, I believe. The way she simply analyzed the account without any anger or resentment at the death of someone who was at least an acquaintance made Ludmilla feel that even her own reactions to loss were soft by comparison. No, it was probably the wrong way to read it. In place of mourning, or perhaps as a form of mourning, these people celebrated those who fell. In a strange way, they were just like her, but she had no one to share the passing of her people with in that manner. I moved down the slope to the next suitable piece of cover, Ludmilla continued, but the next giant, a warrior, was either not fooled or cautious of what felled the hunter before him. He used his axe to split the boulder I was sheltering behind, and mentioned something about my previous opponent being his brother. Ah, Gudrun nodded. I know who they are now. The warrior was as cautious as his brother was heedless, so it makes sense that he would suspect someone lying in wait nearby. What happened then? I kept my distance, firing arrows to hobble his movement. The fight, at that point, had drawn the attention of the swarms of undead nearby. I managed to get behind him and lunged forward, severing his tendons at the heel. He fell onto his knees, continuing to destroy the undead that attacked him, and that's when Sigurd and Brunhild arrived. Gudrun swallowed and set down her nook, and even Elishnish appeared to be giving Ludmilla her full attention. Brunhild threw a boulder, and she prevented me from choosing a new place of battle. Sigurd, he seemed impervious to my arrows, even ones that would light my foes aflame did nothing to him. That would be the work of his frost reaver, Gudrun said. It can be used to render even powerful spells of fire impotent. Those who wield this weapon are the bane of magic casters. Even as they wonder why their magic fails, they are cut down. The enchantment sounded extraordinarily useful for the forces that she planned on training in the future. It seemed that the frost giants already had something unique to trade should they enter into some sort of amicable relationship with the sorcerer's kingdom. I continued to keep my distance for a while, Ludmilla continued, trying to figure out how I could get past his frost reaver. In the end, I took 3 concussion arrows that create a shockwave when they rupture, and released them towards the ice above. After that, we were fighting the mountain itself. Our resistance went on for a while, but, in the end, the mountain took us all. When I next woke, I was buried under Sigurd. Silence fell as Ludmilla concluded her account, until Elishnish resumed eating her nook. Ludmilla and Gudrun both looked at her as the noisy sound of her munching filled the air. "What?" she said between bites. Ludmilla shook her head. She glanced back up towards Gudrun, wondering how she felt about her tale. "You are a huntress," Gudrun said after several long moments. "The way that you fight speaks plainly of this. Considering it was against 4 in such a short period, there would be little doubt over how impressive your feats were. If not for Sigurd and Brunhild's arrival, you would have most likely prevailed over your second opponent." "And what about Sigurd and Brunhild?" Gudrun frowned, staring down at the ground between them with a troubled expression shadowing her handsome features. "By the measures of your people, theirs would be a meaningful death. They were there to drive threats away from our territory, and in doing so, fell. By the measures of mine, I don't know." Gluskopf, Der Steiger kommt. Und hat sein helles Licht bei der Nacht. A cheerful voice filled the air of Nazarik's treasury. The voice rolled over waves of treasure, crusting over glittering peaks and dipping into shimmering valleys as it rose and fell in song. Ins Bergwerk wo die Burgerlut sein. Die der Graben des Silber und des Gold bei der Nacht. Die der Graben des Silber und des Gold bei der Nacht. While Momen slept, the treasurer of Nazarik toiled, scaling veritable mountains of coins, magic items, and crafting materials. Pandora's actor filled a container with valuables in his endless work as the guardian of the guild treasury. Items and data crystals awaited his attention, to be sorted and ordered and reordered. Those that might be of use in the near future were placed so that they could be easily accessed when the need for them arose. Those limited and most rare were meticulously arranged and stored away. "Oh." His hands stopped as they fell over a glimmering object that differed from the coins, jewels and artifacts laid before him. Long fingers carefully plucked it from its place to be raised before his discerning eye. It was fashioned as a large jewel, yet it was not. A data crystal. It was as clear as a diamond, yet dark energy pulsed from within. Greater energy drain. He could understand why it had been deposited in the pile rather than stored away in any specific part of the treasury. Going by how the equipment of the Supreme Beings was fashioned, sets of gear from Yggdrasil were crafted to ensure a set of standardized traits. Amongst these traits were various immunities to certain debuffs, and foremost amongst them was immunity to negative energy effects. These effects debilitated those affected, draining away attributes and even levels. Being susceptible to negative energy drains was ultimately lethal, as one could be afflicted more than once. Losing multiple levels in combat would result in a crippling disadvantage. This being the case, the data crystal between his fingers held little value against players, as all players would presumably be immune to its effects through their equipment. In this new world, however, it was extraordinarily powerful. He dug through the coins where he had found the data crystal. As expected, there were many more buried nearby. In the past, according to his father, Genjiro Summer was the one who organized the treasures of Nazarik, sorting and ordering them into their appropriate places. After his disappearance, however, the Supreme Beings tended to empty their unsorted gains into the great trove that occupied the grand vestibule. Pieces of interest were reserved to be individually placed into specific shelves and alcoves. After he was satisfied that he had located the rest of the hidden treasure, he looked down at the pile of data crystals cradled in his arms. Energy drain, ensnare, paralysis, curse, cuckoo. As with the first data crystal, they were all effects that appropriately equipped players would be immune to. The common theme of the effects suggested that the supreme beings who had deposited them there had returned from some undead-infested area, or perhaps a noxious swamp. Now, what should be done with these? A showcase item for the Adventurer Guild? Some of these are far too powerful. Utility equipment for the Guardians, perhaps? His gaze ran over the gleaming pile that he held. There were quite a few duplicates. Maybe I should test them out first. Player. Asked. Shiltir Bloodfallen's shout filled his mind. Pandora's actor threw up his hands in shock. It took all of a split second for him to realize what he had done. Mein Gott. He stared up at the data crystals flying through the air. As a level 100 NPC, one did not simply throw things. The data crystals were rapidly shrinking away, turning into a glittering constellation against the nightlight canopy above. Wait, what did she say? Player? That's right, aren't you? I found one. Pandora's actor was torn. The presence of a player was a matter of utmost importance, but he had also just sent several dozen data crystals over a kilometer into the air. Shiltir spoke again. Anyways, you asked me to contact you first if I found any players. This much was true. As a part of their ongoing collaboration over matters related to the Sorceress Kingdom, he had asked Shiltir to do just that. Albedo had recruited him in recent months to join a task force formed to specifically respond to the potential appearance of players. His work included sifting through local lore and legends while he performed his assigned duties. Shiltir's ever-expanding transportation network felt like it would be a useful net. Are you all right? Do you require any assistance? Yes, please. I'm in Ashurbanipal at the moment. What? What? Did one of the supreme beings return? Huh? No? I was just looking for a book, Arin Sugar. So there isn't a player in Ashurbanipal? No, of course not, Arin Shu. Sorry. Nervous laughter filtered over the message spell, and Pandora's actor released a sigh of relief. He eyed the space above his head. The data crystals were on their way back down. Now, how do I catch these? He had never dropped a data crystal before, and he wasn't about to let it happen now, but he only had 2 hands. The mind of one of the 3 peerless geniuses of Nazarick worked to devise a solution for the impending catastrophe. As the data crystals plummeted closer and closer, the figure of Pandora's actor melted to the ground. Toe. A high-pitched, feminine voice echoed around the vestibule. Pink tendrils shot out in 4 dozen different directions. They each intercepted a falling data crystal, some tens of meters away, and slowly withdrew back into Pandora's actor. Phew. The voice of Bukubaku Shagama-sama rose into the air. He quickly put away the data crystals and returned to his doppelganger form. I've committed a grave sin. Never in his wildest imaginations would he have thought something like this would occur. To use the form of one of the 41 supreme beings to catch falling items. Pandora's actor looked up towards the distant ceiling, silently begging Bukubaku Shagama-sama for her forgiveness. He made his way back down to the floor of the treasury. After setting the container filled with unsorted items in a secure place, he teleported out of the treasury. Several minutes later, he strode into the Grand Library of Nazarick, Ashurbanipal. An elder lich appeared from out of the aisles of bookshelves. It clasped a hand to its chest as it bowed in deference. Welcome, Pandora's actor-sama. Good evening, Librarian J. Pandora's actor nodded. Have you seen Shiltir, perchance? Shiltir-sama entered the library not 15 minutes ago, Librarian J replied. She came to search for something, but refused the assistance of the library staff. Pay it no mind, Pandora's actor raised a hand. She messaged me several minutes ago, and I've come to assist her. I see. Shall I guide you to her, Pandora's actor-sama? If you please. The elder lich turned and glided forward, robes whispering over the spotless mosaic floor. Soft light cast dim shadows as they passed through countless rows of ebony bookshelves and stands hosting glass-encased exhibits under the expansive frescoes of the ceiling above. As they passed a particular section, Pandora's actor was reminded of his thoughts from before. He idly eyed the databooks that allowed one to produce item frames. Crafting processes from Yggdrasil were far removed from those of this new world. The data books contained templates that could be referred to by those with the relevant crafting classes. Raw materials were consumed to replicate the template and produce the item frame, wherein data crystals were later added to create the final product. The quality of the materials used and the skills, that was, the class levels, abilities and specializations, of the crafter determined the basic attributes and data capacity of the frame. Anyone could take the data book with their desired template and required materials to the basis crafting NPCs to fashion the item frame that they desired. Pandora's actor, however, could assume the form of Amino Mahitotsu, or any of the other supreme beings who worked as dedicated crafters for the guild, to personally create equipment beyond the wildest imaginations of any artisan amongst the citizens in the Sorcerer's Kingdom, nay, the entire region, as far as they knew. The millions of once useless data crystals flooded his mind with visions of the plethora of items that could now be employed to great effect. There were also many data crystals with effects that remained untested in their new world. He would have to take up the topic with his father at some point. Librarian J led him from the antechamber, through the Hall of Reason, then turned to enter the Hall of Knowledge. In one of its side chambers, Pandora's actor was greeted by the sight of Shiltir Bloodfallen, who was sitting at a long table piled with books. It was a sight that many of Nazarik's denizens might find unsuited for the oft-belittled guardian of the first, second, and third floors, but he had seen it often enough as she worked tirelessly to lay the foundations of the Sorcerer's Kingdom's transportation network. With a thankful nod, he dismissed Librarian J and walked over to the table. He glanced down at the books scattered around the table. They were not tomes of mercenary NPC data, nor data for producing items. Nor were they event items or anything magical in nature. They were simply books, books of lore, of setting information from Yggdrasil, and stories left behind by the supreme beings. Shiltir's small frame was bent over the table, and she appeared too engrossed in her efforts to have noticed his arrival. Pandora's actor gently cleared his throat. "I have arrived as requested, minor dame." The floor guardian placed a hand on the desk and looked up. Traces of excitement lined her focused expression. "You've been researching the presence of players in this world, have you not?" "Indeed, I have," Pandora's actor replied. "Their presence, however, has been limited to past events so far. Has this something to do with the reason you called for me?" Shiltir closed the book she was reading, turning it over to face him. "Koningsbock," he murmured. "If I recall correctly, it contains many pieces of lore that are similar or identical to what is found in Yggdrasil. It was placed in a Serbanipal by the Supreme Beings, Arinshu," Shiltir said. "Today, I found someone who was able to quote lines from it with near-perfect accuracy. Have you heard of the like?" Pulling a seat from nearby, he sat down so he could converse with Shiltir face to face. "No, I have not, but I have encountered many uncanny likenesses from other segments of the Supreme Being's lore in the past. Who was this individual you found? Are they in your keeping?" "The person in question has been secured where I found her. It was a frost giant, who immediately recognized me as a Valkyrie." "Tell me more." Pandora's actor leaned forward over the table. Her tale was brief, but it possessed more clarity than any of the murky legends and tales that he had perused in his pursuit of player-related information. It was as solid a piece of evidence of player influence as could be found, barring the physical existence of items from Yggdrasil. More so than those items, it was the impact that players had on the world's cultures that resounded more than anything else. Language, religion, cuisine, traditions and other cultural practices, these things were ingrained into the everyday lives of the people. So as a Valkyrie, or rather, through the setting knowledge that comes with your Valkyrie class, you were immediately able to make this connection to player influence. "That's right, Arinshu," Shiltir nodded. "It was quite a surprise when it happened. To think that this was found within our sphere of influence." Pandora's actor stroked his chin thoughtfully. "I suppose I should extend my research to the local demi-human tribes. So, what will you do with this information?" "Do? I just reported it to you, Arinshu. Should I dispose of the frost giant we found?" Pandora's actor leaned back on his chair. It was more than likely that further information could be extracted from this new source. "Rather than that," he said in pondering tones, "this feels like an opportunity. Do you have any more information about these people?" In response, Shiltir glanced over at 2 stacks of paper on the side of the table. She reached out and placed them before him. Baroness Zaradnik has been compiling information on them for the past few days, she said. We lost track of her somehow, but when we found her again it turned out that she was out there playing her role as a diplomat for the adventurer expedition. You and the others sure are working her to the bone, Pandora's actor mused as he flipped through the notes. Not many of the subjects could withstand what you put her through. They'd at least attempt to negotiate an increase in compensation. She seems perfectly happy to serve, aren't you? Shaltir replied, so what's the harm? I'd rather have someone who is more in line with our own attitudes performing important duties. This was a sentiment he heartily agreed with. Aside from a few outstanding individuals, no one qualified for crucial duties in areas where the government was showing signs of being understaffed. There existed competent individuals, and there also existed individuals who might be trusted to a certain degree. Trustworthy individuals that were also competent in the specific fields that they required, however, were few and far between. Elder liches were excellent when it came to compiling the nation's data and performing pre-ordered tasks, but they were decidedly lacking in the flexibility and independent thought required for middle management positions. Having them succeed in anything with more cultural aspects was like trying to teach Gargantua how to swim. Well, you should at least ensure that your assets are secure. According to the expedition overview, the majority of her equipment is the equivalent of level 10 gear. Most of it isn't even magical. Imagine what level she'd be now if not for all of those deaths. By Einsack's report, she hasn't shown any signs of slowing down yet. Slowing down? Shaltir frowned up at him. How should I put it? Pandora's actor gave the matter a moment's thought. Simply put, we've discovered that the natives of this world have, for the most part, remarkably low-level caps. For humans and many demi-humans, there's a steep drop-off in individuals above level 20, and they become exponentially rarer the higher you go. The so-called realm of heroes - what amounts to the low 30s by our measure, is numbered by individuals per several million. Well, there are certain biases that come with these metrics, which we will personally determine are true or not in time. At any rate, the natives can feel when they are approaching their limits, and it is loosely described as slowing down. That's pathetic, Shaltir wrinkled her nose. How do these people live with themselves? They're all just fodder if it comes down to a fight. Pandora's actor shrugged. I suppose when everyone around you is subject to the same restrictions, he said, it doesn't seem out of the ordinary. The vast majority do not care about their combat capabilities, either. My point is that, since she does not appear to be slowing down, Baroness Zaradnik will eventually become strong enough that she will simply overpower any of the threats that have been causing difficulties at her current level. The sooner you get her there, the less likely she'll be to die and consume resources, and some opportunities can only be seized in the moment of their appearance. Don't think I haven't tried offering her equipment, Shaltir told him. Her sense of propriety and pride is double-edged, aren't you? On one hand, it makes her easy to get along with. On the other, she tends to turn down anything she considers above her. Even that glaive I gave her was snuck into her inventory under some other pretense. A prideful vassal for a prideful liege. Pandora's actor understood this when he had first arranged for them to come together. While most of Nazarik's denizens had no empathy for humans in the way that humans did for their own, they could relate to certain feelings and notions under various circumstances. As Shaltir had noted, Baroness Zaradnik's strong sense of pride and propriety made her easy for the Floor Guardian, who had a strong sense of pride and propriety that lined up with hers, to get along with. Combined with many of her values when it came to duty and service, it created a shared understanding that appeared to keep Shaltir from otherwise acting too forcefully with her vassal. Well, I suppose you have more experience managing low-level vassals than I do, Pandora's actor said, moving on to the next pile of notes. Anyway, based on this information, I believe that my hunch about an opportunity was correct. We can probably bring these frost giants firmly under Iron Summer with a bare minimum in collateral damage. Cocytus is doing his thing with the army, Shaltir said. Won't we be interfering with that? By the looks of it, Cocytus would be more than happy to have these people join the Sorcerer's Kingdom. They appear to be just his type. Besides, the Sorcerer's Kingdom doesn't have an expansionist policy, and Iron Summer has demonstrated that he prefers prosperous relationships over ruinous ones. At the mention of their master, Shaltir finally relented. What do you have in mind? She asked. As I see it, Pandora's actor answered, "The stage has already been set. All you need to do is act out your part." "My part?" Pandora's actor nodded. "It shouldn't be too difficult, you need only be what you are. Now, here's what you need to do." "What are you doing?" "Trying to get that nook sticking out of the bag." "Don't do that." "Why?" "Because it's someone else's food, you can't go around stealing from your host." After Ludmilla's account of her fight in the storm, Gudrun excused herself to retire for the night. The sound of her soft breathing issued from the back of the room, though she supposed that if one considered how far that was, it probably wasn't all that soft. At least she didn't snore. Lady Shiltir had taken Ludmilla's notes with her, so Ludmilla was left to mentally review what had occurred. She still couldn't wrap her head around it. While it was true that a cleric was seen as an agent of the gods by humans, Gudrun's perception of Lady Shiltir went far beyond that. A purveyor of souls, one who delivered the worthy to the frost giant's iteration of a blessed afterlife. Certain sects of Ludmilla's faith saw angels as having a connection to the divine, but it was nowhere near as strongly expressed as Gudrun's perception of a Valkyrie. It was also understood that beings summoned by tear magic were not quite the same as the real thing. Divine magic was seen as the broad allowance of a god's power being channeled by one of their divine agents. Whether a cleric was bestowing a blessing or inflicting a curse, summoning angels or raising undead, it was all seen as an authorized exercise of divine power. It wouldn't happen if it wasn't. Some religions, such as the Faith of the Four, considered necromancy taboo due to its associations with the undead and the energies associated with them, and thus did not cast any spells from that school of magic. A cleric of Sursana like Themis, however, had absolutely no qualms about blasting someone in the face with negative energy, reanimating their corpse, then sending her new pet after their old friends if it was the best solution for a given problem. Clerics did the work of their gods, and Lady Shiltir presumably did so as a cleric, yet Ludmilla hadn't a clue who that god was. The secular nature of both her former and current nation made discussing matters of religion uninvited a taboo, especially for those who held any significant authority. Ilishnish's voice drew Ludmilla from her thoughts. "Can I go now?" "Did Lady Shiltir grant you permission to leave?" "No." "Then no." She attempted to use Ludmilla as an excuse to go off and do things, as well. They waited in silence. Ilishnish would occasionally move around and try to do something, which Ludmilla would put a stop to. Ludmilla reminded herself that it was probably just how frost dragons investigated the world around them, but it still felt like she was looking after a restless toddler. "If you're bored," Ludmilla said, "how about we continue with our lessons?" Ilishnish made a face. It really was like dealing with a toddler. An extremely powerful toddler. It was a good thing that she didn't have tantrums, hopefully. "Is there anything you've come across recently that you have trouble understanding? Perhaps I can provide an explanation or at least an interpretation." "There are a few things." Ilishnish settled down somewhat. "Some of them have to do with you, so I probably shouldn't say." "Someone said something about me?" "Lord Cocytus did," Ilishnish replied. Ludmilla held Ilishnish's gaze, waiting patiently for her to continue. Ilishnish only stared back at her blankly. "What? You're not going to tell me? Did you not hear what I said before? I promise I won't get angry or elbow you or anything like that. I don't think it's something to become angry over." "Then why won't you? Don't tell me that you think it's something that you can use against me." Ilishnish turned her gaze away, and Ludmilla sighed. There were plenty of stories about villainous nobles that plotted evil deeds behind their lieges' backs, but she never imagined that she would ever be in that situation. "Ilishnish," she said, "I understand that frost dragons don't think or behave the same way as humans do, so it may not matter, but I will go ahead and say this plainly. I'm not out to get you, nor do I have my desire to be your enemy. I just want to be a liege who you can place your trust in, and that our relationship is both productive and amicable. I would much like it if we could also be friends." "Lady Shiltir ordered you to take me as your pet," Ilishnish replied suspiciously. "Your ploy to lure me into a life of pethood won't work." "I won't deny that those are Lady Shiltir's orders," Ludmilla said, "but don't you think it's better that it happens on your own terms? Lady Shiltir is patient, but even her patience has limits." "Are you threatening me?" "No, quite the opposite," Ludmilla told her. "I don't want to have it happen that way. A ranger's pet is a cherished companion, not a slave. If this goes on for too long, Lady Shiltir may force you to submit, she might even charm you and make you do it yourself. A whimper rose from Milishnish. Her teary eyes widened as the portal of a gate spell appeared, and she skittered behind Ludmilla's shoulder. Ludmilla rolled her eyes. The frost dragon was perfectly willing to use her as a shield, yet couldn't trust her at the same time. "Welcome back, my lady." Ludmilla lowered her head in greeting. Lady Shiltir turned at her voice, and a thoughtful expression came over her. Her gaze went from Ludmilla to Elishnish, then lingered over the both of them. Is this bonding? Affection between a pet and her mistress? Her lips turned up in a salacious smile. I must say that Aura doesn't go about it this way, but her pets are nowhere near as appealing. You're quite the adventurer, Baroness. She hasn't agreed to become my pet yet, my lady. Is that so? The smile fell off of Lady Shiltir's face. Come to think of it, she didn't display any awareness of your influence as her liege, either. Shall I expedite things for the both of you? Ludmilla felt Elishnish squeeze her shoulder. Her trembling could be felt through her fingers. It's only been a short time since we were introduced, Ludmilla replied. There will be plenty of opportunities for us to get to know each other properly when things go back to normal. Normal, Lady Shiltir's crimson gaze focused on Ludmilla. I wonder if that will ever be the case from now on. My lady. A frown crossed Ludmilla's lips. What did she mean by that? Though she participated in some activities that couldn't be considered normal for a noble, and being a noble of the Sorceress Kingdom was decidedly distinct from being a noble elsewhere, the majority of her time did revolve around her duties to land and liege. There was a lifetime of work awaiting Ludmilla in Warden's Vale, and her participation in the Adventurer Guild was of secondary importance. She could afford to join expeditions when lulls in her domain's development were expected, but she couldn't be away all the time. It's not important for now. Lady Shiltir waved a hand dismissively. There's something that needs to be done here first. Is there anything that you require of us, my lady? Lady Shiltir withdrew a scroll from her inventory. It floated up from her open palm, bursting into azure flames. What's important for now is that you follow what goes on between myself and Gudrun. We are about to wrap up this frost giant problem in one fell swoop. What about Elishnish, my lady? She knows how to keep her head down and, as a bard, her acting skills are top-notch. I have no worries about her if she needs to extricate herself from something. As for you, well, don't say anything that might hamper things. The message ended, and Ludmilla was suddenly left to worry over being a potential source of problems for Lady Shiltir. Elishnish, Lady Shiltir said, go and wake Gudrun. Elishnish audibly swallowed, and she came out from behind Ludmilla. Ludmilla furrowed her brow at the scene of the frost dragon stealthily creeping forward. Was she going to wake Gudrun up, or assassinate her? Shouldn't you have a spell song for that? Lady Shiltir said, it's a fairly low-level one. No? Elishnish looked back over her shoulder. Why would I ever need to learn something like that, my lady? Gudrun stirred, and Elishnish let out a startled noise. She skittered back behind Ludmilla again. The frost giant turned over to face them, and her drowsy gaze drifted until it fell upon Lady Shiltir. Gudrun blinked her sleep away, rubbing her eyes as she propped herself up. Welcome, Valkyrie. She appeared to have many unspoken words hidden behind her expression, yet remained silent after her greeting. I have a question for you, Gudrun, Lady Shiltir said. What are your people doing? My people? What do you mean? Her confusion was evident. Lady Shiltir, however, offered nothing in response. You mean the other tribes? Gudrun's voice filled the uncomfortable silence, the ones who have strayed from the ways of our kind. I don't know. I don't know why they have done so, only that they have. They have forsaken our traditions and the law that Skuld left with us, or have at best twisted them to suit their dishonorable purposes. Humph, Lady Shiltir snorted. I asked if you knew what they were doing. Do you think I care why? Judgment comes for the frost giants of the Azalisia Mountains, Gudrun. I am not the only servant of the gods that has come to this place. Who else have the gods sent? A knight of Niflheim, the sovereign of the frozen rivers. Gudrun stared at them from where she sat, all hints of drowsiness vanished from her wide eyes. Her mouth worked silently, as if shocked mute by Lady Shiltir's words. Long moments passed, then suddenly Gudrun's eyes were filled with tears. When she spoke again, her words were very nearly a sob. For all of us? The 3 northernmost tribes have already been taken, Lady Sheltier told her. Their villages and citadels lie empty, their souls cast down into the frozen wellspring to be ravaged for all eternity by Nithogr. Soon, this fate will be delivered to the great gathering that has come together in the place of the central tribes. But what about the prophecies that were brought to us? Gudrun asked in desperate tones, of the things that will come to pass. What of the time where our honored ancestors will rise with the gods, to fight the great battle that decides their fate? Where the ground will shake, the mountains will fall, and the world burns. Lady Sheltier closed her eyes, letting out a tired sigh. That is why I asked you what your people are doing, she said. The prophecies you speak of, even Ragnarok, the fate of the gods, has long passed. What? It's true, Lady Sheltier told her. Even Baroness Saradnik's people know of this. A time when gods and dragons clashed and died, when mountains were felled and the world burned. Ludmilla looked over at Lady Sheltier with the sudden mention of her name. Though she knew nothing of the frost giant's prophecies, the events described were indeed well known to followers of the Six. Lady Sheltier nodded at her, and Ludmilla turned her gaze up at Gudrun, who looked like she was about ready to collapse. It happened 5 centuries ago, Ludmilla said. A great calamity fell upon the world. Gods fought dragons and all manner of monsters and people. Mountains were split and ruin was wrought as the flames of war spread over the entire world. It was then when the last of the gods who lived amongst my people, Sursana, was slain. In the aftermath, the world was changed forever, the old world passed away. Indeed, Lady Sheltier said. It is a new world now. The new world that Skuld spoke of in your prophecies. I asked what your people are doing because they survived, yet have languished for 5 centuries. Well, no matter, I suppose it was just curiosity on my part. A gate opened before them. Ludmilla, Elishnish, we're heading back. Ludmilla checked around them, searching for anything she might have left on the ground. She and Elishnish took their places beside Lady Sheltier. Wait. They stopped just before entering the portal. Wait, please. Gudrun fell forward on her hands and knees. The tribes have indeed fallen to the ways of weakness, but not all of my people deserve this fate. There must be something that can be done. If the gods will allow it, grant us one last chance to prove ourselves, to redeem our people. She pressed her forehead onto the ice, her long, frost-white hair spread out in a fan around her. Several minutes passed. Haggard breathing rose and fell as Lady Sheltier looked down imperiously upon her. Very well, Lady Sheltier said at long last. One chance. Gudrun looked up with tear-stained cheeks. Her eyes glimmered with the look of someone who only dared to hope. Will it be you that comes forward to deliver the will of the gods? Lady Sheltier asked. No, Gudrun answered. I am not worthy. There can be only one who is suited to serve as your herald. She rose to her feet, tilting her head up proudly. Sigurd, champion of the Frost-Reaver tribe. Lady Sheltier turned to walk over to the pile of pelts at the back of the room, the heels of her armor sounding over the ice. Out of her inventory, she withdrew a familiar-looking rod and pointed it at the makeshift bedding. I hope I get the right one, she muttered under her breath. There was no flash of light or any effect that Ludmilla could discern. The space was just suddenly occupied by the body of a frost giant. Its 8-meter-tall form lay there silently, sculpted features looking very much like an impossibly described fictional character from a sultry novel that she had once found lying around in Leanne Wagner's manor. Except he was very big and very blue. Sigurd's chest rose sharply as he sucked in a breath, and Gudrun let out a tearful gasp. His eyelids opened to reveal icy blue irises as he scanned the ceiling above. The giant's head turned. Sigurd's eyes widened when his gaze fell upon them, and he abruptly sat up. How did he do that? Being as close to an expert on being resurrected that she knew of, Ludmilla was amazed he could even move so soon after. Sigurd felt around the bedding, and Gudrun went over to retrieve an axe, placing it in his hand. To Ludmilla's further amazement, he stood up without assistance or apparent difficulty. Sigurd stepped forward, and the ground shuddered as his towering figure came before them. He went to one knee, and the massive movement caused the air to tremble. Valkyrie, Sigurd bowed his head, and his powerful voice reverberated around the building. This warrior rises to your call.